When I was in 7th grade, these new shorts called Jimmies came onto the scene. The waistband was completely held together by Velcro. They were super comfortable and I had to have a pair. Well, as this trend exploded, so did another one. People quickly realized that if you came from behind and you just pulled that Velcro tab, you could pants someone pretty easily. Just say, that was the first and last time I wore my Jimmies. Now, thankfully, Jimmies have stopped trending, but there are some things that have stuck around since I was a teenager. In fact, they've been around even longer than that. And one of those things that we're talking about today is something that I'm sure a lot of you have encountered already in your lives. It's not a trend, it's a feeling, one that I think many teenagers are familiar with. It's the feeling of anxiety. Okay, so let's stop right here and break this down. Most of us don't really use or think about the word anxiety all that much. When we feel like we're under pressure or worried or we feel restless, many of us would describe that as stress. I think we've all been there. Stress is our body and mind's response to certain situations in life. Maybe you made a bad decision and you're worried about how your parents will react. Stress. Maybe you have a big game coming up and you feel like your whole team is depending on you. Stress. Or maybe you got into a fight with your best friend and you don't know how to repair the relationship. Stress. You see, when our thoughts or the situations in our lives make us feel frustrated, nervous, worried, or angry, our bodies and minds react. That's stress, and it can make our bodies do strange things like having sweaty palms or a rapid heartbeat and difficulty sleeping. It can also make us feel things like restlessness, nausea, or irritability. But do you know what's surprising about stress? It's not always negative. You're probably thinking,
how can stress be good?
When I'm worried about an upcoming test and I can't sleep at night, or when I'm about to play a solo in the band concert and feeling sick to my stomach, how can those things be good, Joe?
well, stress can be both negative and positive. In situations that upset the normal balance of your life, stress triggers your body to respond in ways that cause you to react. Sure, that the stress of an upcoming test can make you restless at night, but it can also get you to focus and study harder. And that drum solo can make you feel like you want to throw up at any moment, but can also give you the jolt that you need to play your best. Stress is also usually short-term and a reaction to something specific in our lives. When the stressful moment is over or the situation is resolved, typically, that stress goes away. But anxiety, well, that's different. Anxiety is an overwhelming feeling of worry, unease, or fear that tends to hang around. It can affect our sleep, can cause exhaustion and extreme distress, and make us unable to focus or control our worry. Anxiety generally affects us only negatively and continues after the stressful situation is no longer there. Situations change, circumstances get better, moments pass, but anxiety tends to linger. And what can be confusing about anxiety is that while sometimes we know exactly what causes these feelings, we aren't always able to pinpoint why we feel the way we do. Sometimes anxiety is just there and we don't know why. For those of us who experience anxiety, the reality is that when it's there, it feels constant. It's a constant feeling of worry, of fear, or nervousness that can interfere with the way that we live our everyday lives. And sometimes it's brought on by circumstances we experience, like the death of someone close to us, or our parents' divorce, or an unexpected illness. But other times, it's just there. We can't seem to shake it, and we don't know where it came from. And in those seasons, it's easy to believe that anxiety is something that we're just always going to feel. The moments of stress pass, but the anxiety, it never does. Anxiety can get to the point where it's hard to cope and change and move on in positive ways. So let's face it, as students, there are a lot of things that you can be anxious or stressed about in today's world. And even if you don't regularly experience the overwhelming and long-lasting feeling of anxiety, chances are pretty high that you have friends or loved ones who do. And if that's the case, what do we do? If we want to be able to deal with our anxiety in healthy ways or support people in our lives who are experiencing those feelings, how do we do that? Well, believe it or not, someone who lived thousands of years ago actually had some great advice when it comes to navigating anxiety. And his name is David. He was the second king of the Israelites, which was the name of a group of people in the Old Testament. And David actually wound up being one of the ancestors of Jesus. But even with being king and part of Jesus' family tree, David still went through some pretty intense rough patches. And one of those times was when David found himself captured by some enemies. He was alone, he was scared, and he wasn't sure how his circumstance was going to work out. This man, who one day would become one of the greatest kings who ever lived, was in a desperate and overwhelming situation. What David experienced is probably best described as super stressful, but we can learn how to deal with both stress and anxiety from how he handled his situation. In the Psalms, we can read about how David managed the stress he felt in this dangerous and fearful moment in his life. And even though David's stress was centered around his circumstances, I think what he said can help those of us who are working under the weight of the anxiety every day. Look at what he says. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In this moment of fear and danger, David made a choice to put his trust in God. He understood that no matter what he was going through, he could trust that God loved him, saw him, and would carry him through any circumstance. Here's what's encouraging for us. We can do the same thing. We can put our trust in God. When anxiety attacks us, we can trust God. When we're afraid, we can trust God enough to talk to him about our fears. When we're overwhelmed, we can trust that God sees us. And when we feel stuck, we can trust that God knows the way out. What David did was so simple, but yet so powerful. He could have kept his eyes on his circumstances. He could have kept his focus on what was causing his stress. But instead, he put his eyes and his energy on the God he trusted to carry him through it. And that simple act helped ease the feelings of stress and anxiety that he was experiencing. Now, let me just pause here. I realize that dealing with something as big and scary and overwhelming as anxiety isn't always this simple. While sometimes saying, God, I trust you is all it takes to wipe out every ounce of our anxiety, it's not always that easy. While I certainly believe that God can do that, I also know that sometimes it takes more than just shifting our focus and our trust towards God. We can know and believe in and trust God, but still experience a lot of anxiety. And trusting in God is not always a quick fix, but it's always a step in the right direction. David's circumstances didn't change right away, but in that moment, he was able to direct his focus and give his fears to God. He reminded himself of what's true about God, that we can trust him no matter what, no matter how we feel or where we find ourselves. You see, while David may not have given us the 100% cure to our anxiety every single time, he did give us the starting point to deal with it. We can practice breaking the cycle of anxiety by choosing to trust in God. You see, while anxiety can be a powerful force in our lives, God is even more powerful. And because of that, we can trust him with our feelings. We can trust and believe that he'll provide us with what we need to navigate our anxiety. And we can trust God to give us the tools to support people in our lives who are experiencing anxiety too. Because here's the truth I want you to hear today. God gives us the tools to handle anxiety. It's like this toolbox. It's full of a bunch of different tools that do different things. When we're working on a project, sometimes we need only a few tools. Maybe we're just hanging a picture, so we just need a hammer and some nails, so we got those here. But other times, we need a lot of tools to get the job done. Maybe we're building an entire deck, so we need like a saw, and we need the hammer, and we need a wrench. You know what? I think we'd need every tool in our toolbox for that kind of job. Dealing with stress and anxiety is a lot like the tools in this toolbox. There are different tools to help us with different things. Sometimes we need just a few of those tools, and other times we need all of them. Either way, it's okay. God gives us all of the tools for a reason. Maybe you don't feel stressed or even struggle with anxiety. Well, chances are you know or care about someone who struggles with these feelings. What's so amazing is that you are the one of the tools that God provides to help them handle stress and anxiety. And because anxiety can be long-lasting and overwhelming, it's important to know how to help your friend when they're feeling those feelings. Because of the unpredictable nature of anxiety, the ways to support your friend may change. But here are 5 ways you can be there for your friend. Be someone that they can go to and trust. Let your friend know that they can talk to you about whatever they're feeling openly and without any fear of judgment. Secondly, listen more than you talk. Just be with your friend and listen to them, like really listen. And then third, you don't have to fix their feelings. Tell your friend that you're there to support them and that you care about them and how they're feeling. Fourth, celebrate their success. When a friend takes a step towards confronting their fears and anxiety, celebrate with them and do something fun together. And lastly, encourage them to talk to an adult. Maybe it's a parent, a small group leader, a school counselor, a professional counselor. If they're afraid to go, offer to go with them. Now, if you're feeling long-lasting anxiety that's affecting your daily life, I have some tools that will help you navigate those feelings as well. Number one, identify your feelings. Think about exactly what you're feeling and, if possible, why you're feeling it. Maybe you're worried or you're scared or you're nervous. Maybe you're frustrated or uneasy. Whatever it is that's affecting you negatively, name it and then try to find the source of those feelings. Secondly, focus on trusting God by thinking about how big, powerful, and loving that He is. Think about how He can walk us through anything we might be feeling or encountering because He can overcome it all. Third, seek out the tools that God gives us. God has filled your toolbox with people like small group leaders and parents and trusted friends and, most importantly, professional counselors who can help you navigate your anxiety. God has given us things like medication and exercise and rest and other healthy habits to manage our feelings. They're all a part of the toolbox. In some seasons, you may need only one or two of those tools to get by. In other times, you might need more. Either way, the best thing that you can do is to get the help that you need. Here are a few ideas where you can start. One, care for yourself. Are you resting? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Are you sleeping at night? Believe it or not, paying attention to each of these things can be really helpful. So the next time that you feel stress and anxiety creeping up, try to take a step to care for yourself. And then talk to someone. A counselor is a great place to start. They're trained to help you work through your feelings and move forward in a positive way. If you're nervous about this, talk to your small group leader or your parent or a close friend and ask them if they can help you take that step. And then remember what's true. Make a habit of reading your Bible to remind yourself of what it says is true about how valuable and loved and cared for that you are. When you feel stressed or anxious, remind yourself of what's true over and over and over again. When we put our trust in God and use the tools He's given us, we can find ways to move forward. God gives us the tools to handle anxiety in our own lives and the tools to support others. So as you head to your small group today, I want you to ask yourself, what's one tool I can use to handle my stress or anxiety or to support others who are experiencing those feelings?